Thaddeus Bradley, the reporter, lays out the extreme length Lionel Sharik is about to go to prove his skills. He'll get locked in an iron safe, thrown into a river, and then attempt to set himself free before the cage floods completely. Before the act begins, Lionel has a word with his son, encouraging him to hold on to faith and insisting he has to prove his doubters wrong. The cage with him inside is then plunged into the river, prompting his boy to start counting. But once 300 seconds pass, the mark where he was supposed to resurface, panic breaks loose when there's still no sign of him, and the kid is held back from diving in to save his father. Thaddeus reflects on the saying, "Seeing is believing," though he questions if that's always true. He turns to the eye, likening it to a kind of big brother, and then to the Horsemen, who some hail as crusaders in the spirit of Robin Hood, while others can dismiss them as nothing more than thieves. The Horsemen had pulled off a dazzling heist overseas, robbing a bank while performing live for another crowd. They conned a man on stage, stripping him of millions, then slipped away by showering their fans with cash. But not everyone was charmed. Thaddeus, the man they once framed, still feels the sting. Now locked in prison, he vows revenge, promising to be there when they resurface and to honor his own law of an eye for an eye. Daniel Atlas, restless after a year of hiding, enters a building and makes his way to a room marked with the eye symbol on its door.
Welcome, Daniel Atlas.
A voice greets him inside, though Daniel is done with patience and wants answers, demanding to know what's really going on. Yet all he hears is the same old refrain, "Wait."
Trust that your unique talents and remarkable mind will not go unrecognized.
He's not satisfied, so Daniel tries to storm out, but the voice echoes the whispers in his head, calling out his interest in taking the reins as leader. He's told instead to stay diligent with what's been assigned to him, and reminded that his loyalty and intelligence will be rewarded in time.
Now leave.
The voice closes with an instruction.
Dylan has a plan, and will gather you together soon.
Wait for Dylan's message, because a new mission is already set. Meanwhile, Dylan, the cop, barges into a meeting led by his boss Natalie to brief her on his latest findings and rumors about the Horsemen. Agent Cowan quickly dismisses him as misguided, bringing up the false alarm he raised months earlier, and the two trade words until Natalie cuts through, overruling in Dylan's favor and telling him to go on. The officer lays out evidence tying a few suspects to the Horsemen, then connects it all to a pigeon he's tracked around them. The mention of it frustrates both Cowan and Natalie, who can't believe he's still chasing what they see as nonsense. Natalie, once respectful of his work as a veteran, now warns him he needs to do better, handing him a short vacation and throwing out his request to act on the intel. Cowan doesn't let it go either, saying Dylan's a clever man pretending to be a fool, even calling him two-faced and predicting that one day he'll be exposed. Later, Daniel steps into his house and finds an unknown woman lounging comfortably on his couch. As they speak, a Rube Goldberg-style trap in the room springs to life, and a blade drops from above, slicing clean through her neck, only for it to be revealed as a dummy. The real woman materializes from behind, and Daniel rushes to restrain her, but the bindings won't hold. She calmly speaks about joining their circle, hints at the female horseman, Henley, who's in a relationship with him, and even brings up Jack, confirming he's alive despite everyone thinking he was long gone. Then, in the blink of an eye, she disappears, vanishing without a trace. Dylan barges in and interrupts Merritt and Jack's back and forth as the two mess around teaching each other card tricks.
Bingo, bango, bongo.
Together they head into the building where the leader is waiting, this time with the same woman Daniel ran into earlier, Lula, introduced as the new Horseman. Her arrival barely stirs excitement, and they don't bother hiding their disapproval. Jack voices his frustration, saying he's done with the behind-the-scenes grind and wants to get back on stage, while Daniel shows signs of fatigue after months of nonstop training with no fresh direction. Their leader doesn't offer much clarity either, admitting he only knows what the eye passes down, before finally unveiling the next mission. Owen's company, Octa, is set to launch a new line of phones, but behind the sleek rollout they're planning to siphon users' data and sell it. Their job is to hijack the spectacle.
Do something. Yes.
As the event kicks off, Jack slips past security, slipping in at the entrance and weaving his way inside. Daniel takes another route, sliding in as a waiter until he's deep enough to shed the uniform, stash the clothes and shoes with care, and step back out carrying a briefcase. With steady confidence, he strolls past the CEO, then loops back and approaches him as a company lawyer. The executive doesn't blink, signs the papers laid before him, and never realizes he's been played. On a whim, Daniel strips off the suit to reveal an engineer's outfit and walks straight into the control room. When the officer inside tries to block him, he snaps a quick photo, prints it on the spot, and swaps the man's identity, slapping a psychiatric tag on him before calling the cops to claim the officer's an escapee from a mental institution. They drag the poor guy out, and when he insists on phoning his boss, Jack steps in, pretending to allow it. But when the man reaches for his device, he pulls out a banana instead, cementing the idea he's unhinged. Meanwhile, Daniel has already secured the circuit board for the Horsemen. With everyone in position, Lula slips into the kitchen dressed as a cook, sparks an argument with one of the chefs, and stages an accident that looks like a deep knife cut, throwing the room and guests into chaos. Merritt seizes the opening, guiding Owen away while keeping him under through hypnotic words and finger snaps. With the executive now pliant, he slips an earpiece on him and ushers him into a room already set for recording. Once Lula sees Daniel step out, she ends her act in the kitchen, and the presentation finally gets underway. Owen takes the stage for his big speech, but every line he delivers is fed directly by Merritt, turning what should have been a polished pitch into a confession of fraud, outing himself while crediting the Horsemen for exposing the scam. As the stunned crowd reacts, three figures leap onto the stage: Daniel, Merritt, and Lula, ready to claim the moment. The trio on stage kick off their speech about privacy and how the CEO has been trashing its importance, and as Dylan watches, the leader spots a fool poker card pop up on his phone and instantly knows trouble is coming. Right on cue, policemen pour in, and Dylan snaps back into his cop persona. But the boss and the sharp-eyed Cowan are already suspicious since he had earlier sent units scattering to other cities just to clear the stage here at home. With the hall sealed and the police stuck outside trying to force their way in, the Horsemen's act suddenly glitches when their mics cut out. The interruption gives way to a hijacked broadcast as a new voice takes over.
As the Horsemen like to say, magic...
And Dylan has no choice but to order his men to fall back. The voice isn't with the Horsemen at all, and it makes that clear by first exposing Jack, a face everyone assumed was long gone, even lighting him up with a search beam as the crowd scrambles in shock. The voice turns on Dylan, outing him as one of them, which is a shock to everyone but Cowan, who immediately slaps cuffs on him.
You have no idea.
Who are you?
Same man I've always been.
Slick as ever, he apologizes, slips free, and in one smooth move, cuffs every cop around him, then leans back and vanishes into the dark. Daniel, Merritt, Lula, and Jack regroup on the rooftop and dive into a tunnel. The ride tumbles out into the middle of a Chinese restaurant, and the bizarre twist leaves them completely baffled. Stranger still, they're all suddenly starving like they haven't eaten in days, which makes the landing feel even more unreal. Daniel clocks that they might be in China before Chase, Merritt's twin, reveals himself with a laugh. Daniel tries to accost him, but everyone in the restaurant stands up for Chase. He tells them they're in Macau, and that this twist is a function of someone else's magic, then orders his men to take the magicians away. While Dylan waits at their rendezvous point with no one showing up, he gets a call from Thaddeus, who doesn't claim responsibility for their woes, but insists he's made a move and now expects Dylan to make his. He says he's glad to see Dylan stranded and calls him a fool. On their way to meet the boss, Chase reveals that he hypnotized Merritt by posing as a pizza delivery boy a month ago without him realizing it, and in that moment collected information on all of them. In the elevator, Lula shares a thought that maybe the Eye is watching everything, letting their troubles unfold just so it can swoop in at the perfect time and save the day. But she's ignored like a text left unread. They finally meet the man in charge, Walter, who supposedly passed on a year ago, but faked it, something he admits he learned from Jack. Walter explains that he went off the grid so he could properly control things from the outside, saying he owns part of Octa and a few other companies, even agreeing he's breaking plenty of laws but brushing it off with a shrug, because who cares? He tells the group he has transcended whatever tricks they play, and now practices what he calls real magic, science. When they try to prod him by explaining how he pulled it off, Walter cuts them short with a scream, warning them not to steal the fun he's having. Then he lays it out. Before the tube they were meant to enter, he placed an identical one, and once they stepped into his, the walls and the music hypnotized them until they fell asleep, making it easy for him to transport them to Macau without their knowledge. Now, Walter says, they'll work for him to repay what they stole from a man the year before, because he had invested heavily in that man's company, and the loss was actually his. He reveals Owen was his partner but turned greedy, setting him up, kicking him out, and then taking credit for their work. With the CEO preparing to sell the company's greatest asset, a chip capable of accessing any computer in the world, to the highest bidder. Walter wants the Horsemen to steal it for him. Everyone else hangs back, waiting for Dylan to decide, but Daniel's all in, thinking it'll be a breeze since they're in the city with the oldest magic store around. Dylan poses as Agent Cowan and meets the old reporter in prison, telling Thaddeus that he needs him to help beat whoever played them and captured the others. But first, Dylan has to secure an extradition order so he can be temporarily freed. Daniel still doesn't fully trust Dylan to be the perfect leader, so he decides to improvise and run things his own way, believing Walter will discard them even after they deliver what he wants, which leaves him convinced their only chance is to reach the eye. They hit the store and meet Lee and Boo, with Lee introducing the older woman as his grandmother. There's a language barrier between the Horsemen and the elderly shopkeeper, and while they sort through that, Merritt steps out with Chase. Meanwhile, Daniel tries to get on the phone with the Eye, exposing that he's been in contact with them for some time. Dylan follows through on getting Thaddeus out, and they head toward Macau. Jack and Lula get a chance to know each other better, and while Jack admits he struggles to resist pickpocketing his exes, Lula shows she's one step ahead by revealing she's been lifting things off him the whole time. Daniel eventually comes back with a direction. At the bar, the twin brothers talk things over, but when Chase tries to leave, he runs into Jack, who attempts to hypnotize him.
Beg for Merritt's forgiveness and realize that you will never be happy.
After a moment, though, Chase shakes it off and calls the trick a failed ruse. On the plane, Thaddeus lays out what he thinks is the real reason Dylan put him behind bars, claiming it's payback for his role in goading Lionel Shrike into attempting a trick 30 years ago that ended his life.
Kill your father.
Dylan denies it vehemently, yet Thaddeus insists, which only pushes Dylan into a rage, caring less about the old reporter's theories and instead focusing all his energy on finding the Horsemen and saving them, even as Thaddeus argues they might be able to handle themselves. After a successful rehearsal for the mission, where they practice card work and master the steps for getting in and out, the crew heads to the casino to make contact with the son of a South African gang leader. They hypnotize him, hoping to steer his actions toward granting them access to the Macau Science Center. At the facility, the hypnotized man suddenly refuses to enter, directing Alan to obey his associates instead. Alan tries to argue for access to the chip, but the man shuts him down completely and drives off. Inside the first section of the building, Alan poses a question that throws them off balance, and he even directs it at Lula, addressing her as a doctor.
Order. So I'm going to ask you one more time, sir.
The others try to jump in and cover, but Lula steadies herself and answers with conviction, which convinces Alan enough to move them forward and grant access into the main chambers. At the security post, they drop everything metallic, but as Jack tries to go through, he's flagged, so they get him back and search him thoroughly, removing a wallet from him. Alan talks them through the facility, and just then, Merritt sneezes, claiming an allergy to something in the room. As he's attended to, Lula passes a special comb to Jack, who quickly goes under the main circuit and begins loosening a screw. He quickly takes out the chip, pins it to a poker card, and gets back to position, but Alan is suspicious and asks the security men to search him. They search all at once, but Jack manages to evade detection and sends the card into Daniel's clothes. The card finally reaches Lula, who picks it up, but the surrounding security derails her next move, so she hides it in her chest, even removing her bra to show she's clean. The card moves again to Daniel, who camouflages it with his jacket. Alan calls for them to leave after a final check. The routine goes all over again, and the card ends up with Merritt. They pass the metal detector one by one, leaving Merritt last. When an officer hands Jack's wallet to him, the alarm goes off, and Merritt uses the moment to send the card to Lula, aided by Daniel's distraction. Walter's on the phone, giving a rundown of the Horsemen's current moves while Thaddeus and Dylan make their way into the magic shop. They bring the men inside, and Thaddeus runs his hands over the special coffin in the shop while Dylan opens the cage his dad used for his final trick, the one that took his life. The old man only has kind words for the late magician, praising him as a master at his craft, but he can't help wondering what really happened. They hand over the late magician's watch to his son and show him where to find his men. And then the old reporter vanishes without a trace. Meanwhile, camera footage shows Natalie that Dylan got in federal cell with Cowan's ID and left with Thaddeus. Dylan meets Daniel in the market and tries to take back control of the Horsemen, apologizing for dragging them into the mess, but Daniel pushes him off, saying he's not in charge anymore and that he's been getting orders from the Eye. Dylan leaves, and while Daniel waits for his supposed contact to hand over the chip, Walter shows up, revealing it's been him all along, the fake Eye connection and the one who had lured Daniel there earlier. They rough him up when he refuses to hand over the prize, but Dylan steps in. He slams Daniel against the wall, lands a couple punches, and shoves him inside a building after snatching the chip, though it's only a diversion to give his man a chance to escape while he takes on Walter and the goons himself. Daniel notices the sacrifice and bolts, while Dylan uses sleight of hand and quick tricks to fend off attacks, slipping away from grabs and counters. They capture him, and when he makes a run for it, Chase suddenly appears, throwing him off and forcing him right back into their hands. Daniel rejoins the pack and explains everything that happened, but they notice the late Lionel's safe being loaded onto a truck, so they follow it. At the port, Walter talks about the similarities between them, how they both have fathers they want to avenge, even though Walter's father is still alive. The guy behind all this pops up, and it's Walter's dad, Arthur, the same guy they stole from on stage last year. Dylan admits that when his dad died, Arthur held back his dad's pension from his mom, which explains the vendetta.
So-called legitimate children.
But Arthur says he shouldn't have come for him, and now he's about to go through the same thing his dad did. They shove him into the safe and drop the box into the water. It sinks fast, filling up with water, and Walter and Arthur are pumped, finally getting some payback on one of the horsemen. Inside the box, the guy's struggling, flashes of his dad's last time hitting him hard. He remembers his dad's last words, pulls out the wristwatch from the magic shop, finds a tiny time medal, pops it out, and searches for the lock inside. Somehow he unlocks the safe and swings the door open at the nick of time. Arthur and Thaddeus are together in the car, with the businessman hoping the old reporter can deliver the rest of the horsemen so he doesn't have to risk his wrath. The man promises to keep his word, and drops the fat brown envelope as a deposit. Underwater, Daniel hauls Dylan out to shore. The guy coughs up water and comes back to life. The team's relieved, thanking him for taking one for the squad, but something's off. They've got the wrong chip. They run through everything trying to figure out how it happened, but nothing sticks, and now they've got Walter to deal with. They huddle up and plan to bluff Walter, making him think they've got the chip while threatening to destroy him with it. Just as they're plotting, Lee and Boo show up.
Of course. Yeah.
Do you know why?
And the old lady starts speaking perfect English, surprising everyone. She explains the fool poker card they've got, and why it's a shot at endless possibilities. They reveal themselves as part of the Eye, and the guys get hyped, excited for this new phase. Meanwhile, Walter gets a video link. When he watches, it's 4 of the Horsemen announcing their next show, setting up a big reveal as payback for the guy who burned them and exposed Jack. Walter sees it and loses it, immediately calling for his father. The cops gear up to chase the most wanted con crew, while Arthur, his son, and Chase cook up a plan to stop the Horsemen from pulling off their big reveal. They touch down in London at a private airstrip, make their way to the office, and while Chase lays out what to expect from the crew, Jack's already pulling a crowd together to kick off the first part of the show, just like the twins said he would. Jack and Lula wow the crowd with their tricks while Walter's crew starts closing in on Jack's location. The cops are also on their tail, which has Walter stressing, so he rings up Thaddeus.
To cut them off before they get to their I'll take care of the FBI.
The guy tells him to keep an eye on the Horsemen, make sure they don't get to the final trick, and promises to distract the security agencies for him. Meanwhile, they see Daniel has gathered a crowd somewhere else, and Walter's CCTV spots Dylan. He can't wrap his head around how the guy they locked in a safe and threw in the river is still alive. The camera also picks up where Merritt's show is going down, and suddenly everyone's moving to that spot. Daniel wows the crowd by freezing the rain and then making it shoot up, getting a huge cheer from everyone watching. Meanwhile, Merritt's on his way to set up for his show when Chase jumps in, trying to block him and squeeze enough info out about where he's heading. Frustrated, Merritt shoves him toward a guy standing nearby, who doesn't notice a thing. Dylan calls his crew to fall back to the rendezvous spot so they don't get caught, but one thing they want to make clear from all the mini-shows they've done is that the audience should be paying close attention. The cops roll in late, but Thaddeus is already there, ready to broker a deal that'll send the Horsemen straight into their hands. The crew finds bikes and tries to ride off, but Walter's men block the way and even start shooting. Jack's strong enough to take out 2 of them and makes it to the leader. But Merritt, clueless on a bike, crashes and gets caught. The rest of the team stops their escape and sticks with him, not leaving anyone behind. Walter and his men demand the chip, but the Horsemen stay quiet, so they're dragged to a private hangar. As they get out of the van, the ground crew is all over them, ushering them into the plane with lights shining in their faces, messing with their vision the whole way. Walter brags about always being one step ahead, calling them predictable, and rattles off that he's figured out where their final trick was supposed to happen, but now he's ruined it. With the Horsemen refusing to hand over the chip, the bad guys press a knife to Lula's neck, demanding Daniel give it up. He hands it over, and Walter checks it, confirming it's the real deal. The team points fingers at each other. Merritt frets about getting thrown out of the plane. Dylan suggests letting them go since they have the chip, and Chase cheekily pushes for tossing the Horsemen straight out the window. Out the window they go, while Walter and his dad pop open the world's priciest champagne to celebrate.
Well done, my boy.
But the first sip turns everything sour. The old man reads the label, spots the fool poker card tucked underneath, and then the wine changes color. Suddenly, the Horsemen are waving from the window, with the plane on a stage in the middle of a river, as there was no liftoff at all. The crowd is already gathered, and Walter and Arthur step out of the jet, looking like total clowns in front of everyone. The police swoop in, leaving Thaddeus behind to watch the chaos. Before anything else, the Horsemen drop the bomb, revealing Dylan as their leader and part of the crew, then casually walk everyone through their whole setup. From swapping the driver of the van that was supposed to take them to Arthur's hangar but instead went somewhere else, to faking the feeling that the plane was actually flying, to hypnotizing Chase the last time he met his brother so he'd suggest tossing them out. They call out Arthur and Walter's plan to get the chip, just to spy on people and sell their private info for big cash, promising to be back another time. Before vanishing off the grid, Lula and Jack steal a quick kiss in front of the crowd. The police finally arrive and, as they grab the bad guys, notice the Horsemen are already gone. Natalie follows a lead, catches up with Dylan, who hands over a drive full of dirt on the bad guys, and casually reminds her he's always been the same person she knew. In a blink, he's gone. The Horsemen arrive at a building and are welcomed by Lee and Boo, who show everyone around while Dylan drifts into an office and spots a picture of his dad with Thaddeus. The old man appears, confirms he was Dylan's dad's partner, and explains his role in publicly goading him. Though the tragic incident wasn't part of the plan, even after Dylan sent him to prison, he couldn't fully reveal himself, since Dylan hadn't let go of his weaknesses and had messed up their show plans, until the Macau flight, when the leader finally put the Horsemen first. Everything around Octa and the safe in the water had been carefully orchestrated by the Eye. The Horsemen run into Alan from the Macau facility and are stunned. Thaddeus apologizes to Dylan for his dad's death and hands over operations of the Eye. The others are buzzing with questions, but the old man just laughs and walks off, leaving them to explore the Eye. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe, and you also might enjoy watching these. Thanks.